Hello and welcome to another interview with a passionate member of our WHIP community, Dakota Winrich. Welcome. How are you?
Hi,
That's
I'm doing
awesome.
good. Thanks for having me.
Very glad to have you. As I say at the beginning of so many of these, that these interviews are here to bring the community together. So I thank you for coming together with me, and we can chat about all things WHIP related and things that we're
Sweet.
excited about here. So, I mean, just to get started, I mean, you are a
Yes.
longtime whip performer, whip artist, and whip maker. What is it that
Yes.
got you into whips, and how long ago was that?
Right. So I guess to when I started whip cracking, just to give a little
Hmm.
context, I guess, my mom and my dad both were doing Renaissance festivals since the late 70s, early 80s.
Wow.
They met, they had me, and so I have always been in the Renaissance festival environment, which will make me telling you how I started whip cracking make more sense. So just picture
Okay.
being at a Renaissance festival. Um, so essentially, from a very young age, my dad used to just keep me at the stage with him. He used to say it was cheaper than a babysitter. So I would be there. I would clean up the stage when they were done. He had a show that had sword fighting in it and some whip cracking in it. And he still does that show
Wow.
today. I work with him sometimes.
What's his
You have
name?
seen that show, I think. My dad's name is Jose Granados.
Okay.
The show is called Don Juan
Okay.
Miguel. But
Cool.
yeah, so yeah. I was probably like when I first remember cracking a whip, I was probably about 7, and I would clean
Wow.
up the stages after the performances, so the props would be everywhere. And I remember just like picking up a whip, one of my dad's bull whips, and cracking it. And I didn't really think that much of it, but I remember my dad looking over at me with this surprised look, being like, "Oh, okay."
So that's a thing she
I
can
guess
do.
we can work with this,
Right.
because I'd never tried to do it before. And then very slowly, he didn't want to like push me into it or make me be on stage. So, and I was a really shy kid. So very slowly, I like practiced with cracking a little bit. And then when I was about 10, um, I started doing more in the show, like holding targets for him and stuff like that. And then
Wow.
when we decided it was time for me to start whip cracking in the show and cutting targets and doing that, he had a Western stage props catalog.
Right.
So I remember he got me a little indie whip, and he got the Art of the Bullwhip. And I remember being sat down in front of our VCR and watching the Art of the Bullwhip. And that was essentially it. We watched that VHS tape, and then we went outside, and he duct taped some targets to the end of like a wrapping paper tube,
Right.
and he held that out, and I cut those targets, and then I didn't hit him. So he was like, "Cool, all right, we're ready. let's go." So that
Wow.
was essentially how I started performing. It was very, it wasn't like a skill that I saw and then decided I was going to put like tons of training and effort into. It was just kind of something that we did in the show and I thought was
Hmm.
cool, and then
You
I
thought it was
started to do.
cool?
I did, yeah. I mean, I thought, I was like 7, 8. I thought everything my dad did
Right.
was cool. So, so like,
Dad.
I also did. I was trained in like stage combat and sword fighting, but I'm not. And part of this is why I don't do a lot of two-handed whip cracking. Which, if people who've been out to like the LA Con, you don't see me like out there doing that, is I lack any kind of rhythm. Very bad at anything that requires like dancing, playing guitar, anything like that. And two-handed whip cracking is very rhythmic. And sword fighting is very, it's like dancing, and I was so bad at it. So
Oh no.
we stuck to whip cracking.
Ah,
So
how did that feel when you were like brought into the show? Did you? I mean, you said you were doing other things too, I guess.
yeah, I had already kind of been in the show a little bit. We used to have a bit where I was probably like 10. I would come out and my dad would want to cut a target out of my hand. And he would crack the whip once, and I would run backstage, and I'd come back with this big glove on. He would crack the whip again. I'd run backstage, and I'd come back with like big earmuffs on. And it was just kind of a fun little thing. So I was used to being in front of people. It wasn't like being in front of people is hard. So I was always just like very quiet, on stage. I
Sure.
wasn't like a super precocious kid. So getting to do the whip cracking was fun because I had like a little bit more to
Okay.
do. I enjoyed that.
And then fast forward to today. I mean, and you're
Right.
doing. I mean, what are you doing today? I mean, do you have lots of shows that you're performing with? What is your?
So I do, I mean, honestly, so I've been, most of my time is spent whip making, but I am still a performer and I mostly still perform. I never stopped doing it. So essentially, from when I first started
Mhm.
around 10, which was what, like 25 years ago at this point, uh, I never stopped doing the show. So I always worked with my
Mhm.
dad. I never like left to go do anything else. I was homeschooled, so I didn't have to leave for anything like that. And so I still work with him today. I just work less. I do two festivals with them, and I do kind of. I always focused on target cutting. Um, Whip cracking in general, when I was a kid and in the Renaissance Festival community, was very different. I think that what people see now. A lot of people, if they're into whip cracking, they think of like rhythmic routines or two-handed whip cracking or a lot of like tossing or, that's kind of what we're seeing now. But then it was way more of kind of like a throwaway trick. It was
Really?
something that people would have in their shows. Yeah, to like, you would bring it out in the beginning and you would make noise and you would gather your crowd and you'd probably just do a few
Ah,
cracks and then you would throw it away. A lot of people had bullwhips in their shows, but it was not your main skill. It wasn't like what people came to see, kind of until Adam started doing Renaissance festivals. There was no such thing as a show about whip cracking. It was just something that people used in their shows. And so that was kind of like, I had no idea that you could do more than just basic cracks, kind of cool cracks, wraps, and target cutting. So that's essentially all I did growing up. And that's still what I do in my
mm,
dad's shows.
wow. I'm looking forward to seeing more of those. It really puts it into perspective about how much time, I mean, of your life also that you've put into developing these
Mm-hmm.
skills. Um,
Yeah.
why do you think it was a throwaway thing up until Adam?
Well, I mean, there's no YouTube,
Oh,
right? Back
sure.
then, there's not really any internet. So, like, you really had to be into whip cracking to, like, see what people were doing on the other side of the world or know that there were other different kinds. Uh, like, Renaissance whip cracking was very similar to, like, circus. In the fact that it was like used as something to make noise, to get
Mm,
attention, to um, cut targets. I mean, there were festival performers who were doing like targeting routines, which is why I started doing it. That was a thing, but it once again, it wasn't like the main aspect of their show. It was kind of like a part
right.
of their show. So I think that was just. I mean, even if you watch like Indiana Jones, like he's just kind of cracking the whip or grabbing some things, or it's all very simple whip cracking. It's not like a big thing, and that's kind of what whip cracking was like
Sure.
to that environment.
I guess
It wasn't that it wasn't special, it was just kind of like.
which, I guess also the whip used to be a lot more ubiquitous. There was all over. I mean, you went anywhere, your coach driver had a whip. Um, Anybody
Right.
that was, I mean, it was more common. And to see someone do something amazing with something that's so common in your life probably was, I mean, people
Mm-hmm.
got to be decent with whips before they became amazing with it. I think maybe that's why we were talking about knife throwing with someone else.
Mm-hmm.
The community knife throwing community is a little larger, maybe a lot larger than
It is,
whip
yeah.
cracking. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we all have knives. We carry pocket knives and things. So it's
Right.
amazing to see someone throw knives and be amazing, be good with it. Because I use a knife in the
Mm-hmm.
kitchen. I can't imagine doing that sort of thing. What do you think of?
Right. Yeah. Knife throwing. I do also I do knife throwing. So Adam and I perform at the Texas Renaissance Festival together, and you really don't need two whip crackers in a show. So when we decided we were going to do that, I had already known how to throw knives, but I kind of practiced a lot more so I could throw around a person. And so I throw knives around Adam in our show. So he does all the whip cracking and then I do that. Um, and I have been to like knife throwing competitions, and I would say, yeah, it's definitely bigger than whip cracking. Um, but yeah, it's just something, it's so relatable. I think everyone has the idea of like what knife throwing is, whereas whip cracking, I don't think is a small sport, but whips um, have such a variance of like
Yeah,
what
very
they
true.
are and how people use them, that it's not that it's like one tiny community, it's a bunch of communities that maybe don't overlap.
Sure,
Um,
I could see that.
so yeah, it's just not as common.
So, hmm, with with it as through your career and all, when did the whip making come into it? Was it something that you've been working on all along as well?
No, I had never crossed my mind that I could make a whip. It was a prop that I used. I also had never thought about making a sword. Um, Really, whip making started.
Fair point.
Um, I personally have always been very, very crafty. I'm just a very crafty person. I like making things. I'm very good at piecework. If you've ever been to a Renaissance
Mhm.
festival, they sell like flower garlands, and
Right.
the companies that make those hire people to make them. So I would like make those for the company in my spare time. I just enjoyed doing things. So Adam told me that he thought that I should learn how to make whips because it was a skill and an interest I already had as far as using them. Um, and it also was like I get to make things, but then I get to sell them. So it was he thought that it would be like a good fit for what I was already good at. I'm a very
Sure.
task oriented person,
I
and
would
he was
certainly
right.
say,
So
yeah,
I
he certainly was.
yeah,
My goodness.
I started making whips in what was I think it was 2013 is when I started making whips. And when
Wow.
I first started, I I only made little like 12 plat bull whips. That's the only kind of whip I made. He kind of showed me how to do that, and we worked on a design, and I really liked it. And no one else was making that kind of whip really. Um, and it was just like a really light little bull whip that you could use. And I did that for like a year, and then I realized like, oh, I really like these like hybrid whips. Like I'm gonna try making those and see how that goes. I think it's something that's more popular or was like more used than a bull whip. So that's when I switched. And I still make all kinds of whips now, but like the hybrid whip is just has soared in popularity. And so that's the
Yeah.
majority of what I make now.
I think everybody I've talked to has either owns one of your whips or several, or have used them
Right.
and speak very
Yeah.
highly of them. So congratulations on your
I'm
success.
very, thank you. Yeah, I'm very grateful. Also, probably you're talking to like my friends. So like, yeah, they
It's
probably
a
have.
small community, but
Um, yeah. But
but
no,
still,
it's been really great. I really enjoy it. I'm lucky that it is something that I like doing, something I already had knowledge about, and that it just it's easy to get burnt out on when you're
mhm.
making something, but I like it enough that that hasn't happened.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of variance that I'm sure between what people are asking for versus, like you said, different styles and stuff. Do you feel like you can
Yeah.
be creatively, artistically expressive still, or is it turning the crank every
Um.
day?
No, it's definitely like when I don't like this is a just in whip making in general, this is a really slow time of year for like sales because it's like very wintry in a lot of the country.
Mm,
So this is like the time I've had the most off in a while where I don't have a ton of orders. And so like even though I don't have a ton of orders, like I've still been making whips because I can just put them in stock, and I kind of miss it when I haven't done it for a while. And it is that like creative, oh, I wonder what these colors look like
right.
together. Like, oh, I want to see like what this would be. And I purposely try to stay away from like fancier plaiting, that style of whip, just because as soon as I start doing that and putting that out there for people to see, that's all that people are going to want to buy. And I think that would drive me crazy. I think it would hurt my brain to make just like fancy plat whips in the volume that I make whips.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I could see that. And if it's not something you enjoy, I mean, why? beat your head against the wall. But
I mean, yeah, I've made some handles and it is super cool. I mean, obviously, I think like fancy nylon whips are really beautiful and I enjoy seeing what other people come up with. But I really like making just colorful, pretty, very useful whips instead of, I don't know, focusing on like reinventing it.
right, right. Which I guess was another question I was going to ask you was about if you've been experimenting with other designs or if you kind of have honed in, you have your particular way of doing it.
Yeah, well, when I first started making, I mean, I'm lucky enough to live with someone who is an incredibly good whip maker and has like the most whip knowledge of anyone out there. So it is easier for me to say, oh, I want to do this or I want to try this. Like, do you have some input?
Hmm.
Um, so like the hybrid design, the performance hybrid design that I make initially is like an Atom design. So it's very similar to the kind he makes. But then over the years, like I'll change things or I think, oh, this would look better. So now the design I use is very similar to his, but he wouldn't be able to make that exactly. He wouldn't know exactly what
Sure.
I've changed or things. He has made juggling whips for Aaron Bonk,
Hmm.
and so I know how to make those, and then I sell those now. But um, he he makes them differently than I do. So like he showed me how to make them, and then I changed things that I thought like, oh well, this is how I would want it. Um, so I am always kind of, if I find something in a design that I'm using that isn't working well, or I want to change something, I have to experiment with that a little bit. But for the most part, the styles of whips that I sell are styles that I have kind of honed in on like what
Sure.
works best for that style. So I don't change that
Right.
regularly. And juggling whips are the last style of whip that I added to like for sale. And those took me a little while to like figure out how to change, kind of to make them a little easier to make, less fussy, but still be able to
Right.
be juggling whips.
Yeah, I'm sure with the juggling also, I mean, obviously it's all about the weight distribution, so it's probably more touchy than some of the other ones.
It is. It is, and I don't juggle. So like it's not like I'm gonna go out there and juggle them, but it's just kind of like, I mean, I think with the juggling whip, he made them, and he said this as well, he's made them to Aaron's specifications. So
Hmm.
like what works for Aaron isn't gonna work for everybody. So as long as it works as a good whip and you can throw it up and it doesn't fly off in the wind, it's everyone is going to use a different kind of whip. You don't have to have those for juggling. It's just like that's what they're marketed as, kind of thing.
Right, sure. I mean, if we look at getting to the LA WhipCon, we're going to talk about in just a second. It's more
Yeah,
like Justin Baretsky, his weirdness video. There's all sorts
right.
of contact stuff and neck releases, and while it's not technically juggling, I wouldn't say it's not either. So, I mean, it's the whip is moving all
Right,
over
well,
the place.
yeah, like contact, like it's a
Yeah,
contact thing. There's contact juggling. I mean, I guess most people would think of like David Bowie and Labyrinth, like all that stuff is contact juggling. So that's its own thing. um
sure.
which is, yeah, like that's
Right, and
that's cool. Like,
uh, it's a very different weight than. Well, I haven't talked to him actually about that particular whip, but it's a very different style than what Aaron uses, at least, which is really fascinating.
right, yeah.
So yeah,
And like Adam has been working on whip juggling. Oh, sorry, I was gonna say like Adam's
no,
been
no,
working on whip
please.
juggling, but he doesn't even use that style of whip. So he uses a totally different style of whip for juggling that works for him. So it's really just it's whatever works for you. It's just a starting place.
Okay, that's a really good tip. Also, I mean, use what you have, and maybe come up with your own style, right?
Oh wait.
That,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. Um, so yeah, we touched on LA WhipCon a little bit. That's been obviously the focus of a lot of these interviews up to now.
Yeah.
And you've been obviously to the last couple in person. And you mentioned to me when we were chatting that you've judged some as well.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I definitely want to hear about that. But also the compare and contrast for this year. So going back to previous years, I mean, what is your experience with that, and how did you enjoy them versus this year's virtual thing?
Well, Let's see. With the in-person ones, because like how many was there? 4 or 5 LA WhipCons? Five in person. So um like at first it is, I mean, it's just kind of stressful. Like it's Adam's event. Um, but when it comes to the in-person ones, I mean, there's a lot to be done, and I try to do as much of that as possible. So um like a lot of the just gathering of stuff and making sure we have everything together and just
Hmm,
getting everything set up is mostly my part in in the LA WhipCon.
can't imagine.
And then kind of by the time the day arrives, right? Well, just it's great. I love it honestly because I'm a very
Okay.
organized person. It hurts my brain to not be, and so like it only helps really. Like I'm glad to have something to do. Um, but yeah, so like that's kind of the thing. By the time the day comes along, I don't really have too much to do. Like everything's set up. I do help with like a lot of the competitions we have are timed, so I'll time them. We
Hmm.
try to mix up the judges year to year. So I think I've judged the freestyle competitions a couple years, but then we try to have other people come in and judge them. What's difficult is trying to find someone who doesn't want to compete to also be
Oh,
a judge.
right.
So that's also why I've done it. Peter Thorndike was a judge. I think his dad helped judge a little bit last year. I'm trying to remember. Paul Nolan might have done it one year. And then we have like the littler competitions, like the speed and accuracy and the bullwhip fast draw. And usually I'll just help around with that. Um, and then the first year, I think it was the first year that we tried to do it, we did actually try to do a performance category live at the event, like we did
Hmm.
similarly to this year online. Um, but there was only maybe like 3 people
Oh,
that were interested in trying to do like a performance live. So we don't do that one anymore. But that was also part of what I would judge because that is what I do. So
right.
it's just kind of fits in there.
I mean, so this year, I mean, that obviously was one of the most stunning things I think that we got out of this was the performance category. And it was amazing to see what Baby Yoda was able to. No, I mean, we-
It was
but
pretty
we
fun.
got yeah, it was fun. And obviously have some amazing videographers and artists out there.
Mhm.
Uh, do you feel like this is something that would be conducive going forward? That a
To
virtual
like keep
competition,
doing,
doing a
yeah,
virtual one?
absolutely.
Yeah.
If for no other reason, honestly, and like Adam and I have talked about this a little bit, there's so many people who aren't able to get
Mm,
to LA once a year, whether it's like work or money or time or it's just or your family. Like it's just traveling isn't always easy, and especially if you're in another country. So I think in general, having the virtual competition is great because it allows for a lot more participation than just having one live like in LA would do. So I think
sure.
that's really cool. Um, like we had people from other countries coming in and doing stuff with the videos. That was great. So I definitely think that it's something that we should do, even if we are able to go back to doing this in LA in 2022. Um, I think we'll definitely still have like an online component for it because it's just fun.
Yeah.
And it's a free competition as well. When we first started the competitions in LA, it was free to compete. And then it costs us so much money to put it on. So we started, I think I want to say it's like $20 and you can compete in any of the categories. And that's what we do now. So the virtual competition is also a way to do it for free if you don't want to come out to LA or you can't afford to do it.
Right. No, that's great, and I really hope you do. I enjoyed this year, and it was also fun to do multiple takes. Justin talked about this, Beretsky,
Yeah.
in on his interview about he just did so many that this is the best whip cracking that he can do. This is the one take that was the best,
Mm-hmm.
and it really shows just
Mm-hmm.
how amazing a quality we got from all around the world.
And like I think it's really I mean, I can't speak for everybody, but like I personally, I'm a very competitive person, but I don't love competing in events live, it makes me
Hmm.
nervous. I never really do my best. I've competed in some knife throwing events, and it's your nerves do get the best of you sometimes. Todd Rex talks about this a lot every year at the WhipCon. He's always so nervous, and I'm like, Todd, you're great. Like, there's nothing to be nervous about. But it's like it's that thing of just competing live. So I think it does give people a chance to maybe show like their best whip cracking, or just do something and not have it be so
Right.
stressful, to be able to film yourself like at
Right.
home in your backyard. So there's just different aspects. Some people need that adrenaline to like really do their best, so it just depends on the person.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, we're going to be talking to Todd on Tuesday, so you can
Oh,
listen
nice.
to his uh, his thoughts on. It. I
Yeah,
have to ask him about that.
every year at the WhipCons, like before the competition, he's like running around and really nervous energy, but he always does great.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Um, do you have any suggestions, since I mean, being a judge and a performer,
Mhm.
when you're building a routine, for whether it's single hand, double hand, or performance, for
Well, let's
like
see. So
if
for the yeah,
no,
go ahead. Sorry.
like Justin was talking about how kind of picking what you're good at, and then if you
Mhm.
start keep screwing up one thing, maybe cut that out, or but want to score
Yeah,
at
it's
it.
hard. I mean, I know you interviewed Adam. So I would say like with the freestyle competitions, um, he would have a better idea, because like even so the virtual competitions, he watched all the videos
Hmm.
for this year, and then he picked out his winners, and then he found a bunch of alternates, and then he brought all those videos to me, and I watched all those videos to have like a sounding board to make sure like what he
Sure.
thought was correct, or um, and then we didn't end up changing anything in the freestyle competitions, but we did end up changing and altering a lot in the performance category, because um, I had opinions on that. So we moved some stuff around there, um, and we're really happy with like how that was done. Um, but the I guess with the freestyle competitions virtually,
Hmm.
they are being judged a little differently than they are judged in person,
Sure.
and that's just because in person we can really see you're 6 feet 10 feet from us. We can really see what you're doing. We can hear all the cracks. um, we can feel your energy and like kind of get a feel for how you're doing, and we have you go for like the complete minute. Yeah, like you're being timed by a person. You get like a 5 4 3 2 1 before the minute's over. So it's
Mm.
it's it's a little different. It's hard to really hear all those cracks and
That's
see
true.
everything that's happening in a video, so it's judged a little differently. So I don't have like a ton of advice. I would just make sure if you're filming yourself for the video one that you have like some energy to it. Obviously that's not what you're being judged on, but um, the way you present something does affect how people see
Absolutely.
it. Uh, that
Absolutely.
kind of goes for all things in
Sure.
life. Um, so just having, technical cracks obviously are going to get you more points, performing them well. But just also like your demeanor and how you
Okay.
present them is important.
Yeah, that's helpful. But what about from the other perspective, as a competitor, or just as someone preparing a performance, whether or not you're
Mm-hmm.
going to be judged by someone taking score for a competition, but still you have an audience that
Mm-hmm.
being judged, if you will, right? In a way, yeah. I mean, you want the applause,
Yes.
if nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
Um, how do you go about determining what a good performance for you, Dakota, for you personally, when
Mm-hmm.
you're wanting to set this up? What is that thought process?
Like what I would consider a good performance from
Yeah,
myself, or like what I like.
or
Um,
what would you purposely leave
hmm.
out, or that sort of thing?
I mean, that's let's see. It's a hard question. I don't know. I have been doing this. Like, I am by no means like an amazing performer, but what I do have is a huge amount of knowledge. Like, I grew up watching some of the most famous performers in my industry and watching them perform their shows, seeing them. They were my friends. So whether or not like I can do something, I can tell like what a good performance is, or
Mm,
what um like objectively, even if it's not something I like or I would do, I can tell what works. I'm trying to think like for myself going out, things that are important to me as a performer is you want to if you're doing skills, you want to, you want to know what those skills are, you want to have them down, or you want to go out unprepared and have material for when you fail at that skill. That's also totally fine. My dad is the king of that, which kind of, when I say like we didn't practice a lot, I just kind of went out there with a whip after we knew I wasn't going to hurt him. That's very much his style.
Wow.
And that's also very much my style, is you just kind of go out there. As a Renaissance performer, we're very lucky in the fact that we do 4 shows a day, at the least, over a weekend. So if you do something in a show, it doesn't really work for you. You have an opportunity 45 minutes later to do it
Sure.
again and change it a little bit.
Sure.
So like for me, when it comes to like a performance, you just kind of have to go out there and try things. You just want to have your skills or know how to cover if you don't have your skills. Um, being just having fun honestly goes a really long way. If you
Yeah.
don't want to be up there, then people can tell. Um, but yeah, like just your energy. If you do have a live audience, does make it easier. Although Adam and I just performed at the Texas Renaissance Festival, and because of COVID, our audience size, for safety and social distancing, was cut, I think, more than in half.
Wow.
So we had very, very small crowds because like at least half the benches had to be roped off so that people could safely sit. And it does make it a lot more difficult. So if you don't have that like hundreds of people out there who can cheer for you, you have to come out and bring that
Right.
energy to them a little bit, or at least continue to keep your energy up there if you're not getting it back from them. So that's also something that you can do if you're just filming a video, is pretend that you're out there and you have to bring the energy to these
Okay.
people, because you can feel that through a video.
Get 4 of
Even you can tell.
your best friends behind the camera just cheering you on. No.
Yeah, like if that works, totally. I don't know.
No, I
I
love
filmed
it.
that Baby Yoda video like in our yard,
That's so
in
cute.
like 12 minutes. Like I wasn't, I mean, obviously I wasn't eligible. So like I was just trying to do it just to, be a part of it and have something fun to do. Had I been eligible, I probably would have been like way more, uh, I don't know,
Uh,
strict about what I was doing. I would have tried harder, I suppose.
It was really cute, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. My kids enjoyed it. My wife enjoyed it.
There you
Thank you.
go. Just
So,
just trying to bring joy.
right, and you completely succeeded in that. And some of
Thanks.
the other ones, I mean, not that we didn't enjoy it, but my kids didn't enjoy some of the other ones. It's just technical whip cracking, and I enjoyed it.
Right.
I can see the detail in it, but didn't have baby
I
Dakota.
will say, so, because we probably will do this next year. I don't know how many people who might see this are competing in the performance category for next year. Um, what I will say, that there are a couple things that we did learn and that will kind of be noted. I wouldn't say they're rules for performance. Um, However, the category was left super open. Like I think Adam's rules were it needs to be under 3 minutes and have a whip in it. That's all it has to be, because we really wanted to see what people would come up with. Like as performers, we have an idea of like what's going to be entertaining, but sometimes you don't know what you want to see until someone shows you that. So I think really the only thing we're going to make more specific next year is like make sure you're not blurry, make sure you're in the frame, just like little things that would we can pay more attention to, like your performance, if
Mm,
we can like see you,
must have audio.
kind of thing. So we'll just like put those out there. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Little
Um,
things.
any thoughts on? I was talking to Leah Orleans, uh, earlier
Yeah.
today, and she was talking about doing something like everybody getting their videos on YouTube and then using hashtags so we can like get an organized list and things like that. That
Right.
may be too much to ask, but
No,
just some.
actually, Adam was in like a chat today talking to people, and he said the same exact thing. So yeah, that was I guess I don't know where he got the idea from, but of like having hashtags to easily locate videos.
We're all
He's
friends with
looking at
each
me
other,
like, what do
so
you know?
who knows?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, he
Right.
says that's just how the internet works, so that's how he was gonna. But yeah, like um, having everything in one place for next year. Because I guess what Adam didn't anticipate for this year is that so many people would care about the other videos.
Sure.
So like there was a lot of people that wanted to see like what every other person
Right.
had done. And uh, I guess that makes sense that you would want to do that. But some people like didn't want to post their videos publicly, or so they send them directly. Some people are more shy about it, and so like that wasn't just something that he thought of right away. But yeah, definitely going forward, we would make it like so you have to put them on YouTube in some way or another, and then probably put a hashtag so that we could find them
Right.
later.
I think
Make it easier for
that would be
people.
a lot of fun. I know I cared a lot about it, and um, Leah actually put that compilation video together, which was really nice.
She did, yeah.
Finally get
I haven't
together,
watched it because it's like 35 minutes and like I don't
and that's just for the
I
winner.
don't know how.
She has the other second video. It's
Oh, really?
81 minutes or something. It's
Okay.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
of all of them.
See, that's the thing is like I really enjoy whip cracking, but I don't know if you could get me to watch 81 minutes of YouTube videos where people are whip cracking. It'd be
Not
hard
all in
pressed.
one setting. Yeah. No, I
Right.
get it. Oh my goodness. Well, this has really been wonderful, and I thank you so much for sharing your knowledge
Yeah.
and your experience, both in your performance as well as in whip making. And if there is someone that doesn't have one of your whips already, or they want
I'm
another one,
sure.
uh, of course you're on the internet all over the place. But the Kitty Whips,
Yeah. Kittywhips.com, Facebook, Instagram,
got
all
that
that.
all the same. That's awesome. And is there any other thing that you would like to share with the whip community to help us all come together?
Oh
Final
man.
words of
Uh that's a lot of
wisdom,
pressure.
right?
N uh no.
Don't need
No,
to
I
know yes
think
or
I
no.
honestly I think everyone's doing a really good job. Like I don't think there's any like words of wisdom I would have to like the whole community. I think that we've all done a really good job of like I mean also just look at all of this. Like it's just one virtual competition and now there's like interviews and there's compilation videos. Like I
Yeah.
think we're all putting a lot into it. Um and like I said, whip cracking is very diverse. So there's kind of like our community that we have as like performance and double-handed whip cracking and like all these different things, but there's so many different versions of whip cracking that people do. And I think that it's I don't know, I think everyone's doing a really good job.
Well, that's awesome.
If they have specific questions, anyone can always message me too. Like that's fine. But like
Right.
off the top of my head, I can't think of any like
There's no
amazing
glaring
words of
faults, which
wisdom.
is a good sign.
No, not really, just like get out there. Don't be afraid to message people if you have questions. I mean, there's very few people in the whip cracking community who I have met that wouldn't want to help you with something
Mm.
or be open to helping you or talk to you or, it's few and far between. Um, so I just think if you want to try it, you should reach out to somebody. If you don't know what to do, look on YouTube, send someone a message. Uh, we're all very accessible.
I, I I can't agree more. That's wonderful. And you guys have helped me a ton, both through YouTube as well as in person and chatting. So thank you very much. And I
Yeah,
look forward to seeing you in person either at one of the local RinCons here
I
or
know. Yeah.
or
One
next
day,
year.
hopefully. Fingers
One
crossed.
day.
I'd love
That's
to work
right.
again.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again. And to kittywhips.com. Go get you a whip. Right. All right. Thank you. Bye bye.